Hey folks, lyarri here. Today we're reacting to a Marathon Infinity review by MandaloreGaming. I'm excited. I've heard this pocket's super wacky. We've reacted to the other 3 videos in the series, and yeah, let's go.
Frog blast the vent cord!
Hmm.
If you thought the first Marathon could be loopy, Marathon Infinity is a whole new
Little
level.
loopy.
The game also wasn't developed entirely by Bungie, but by a new studio called Double Aught. Now, Double Aught was filled with and founded by ex-Bungie employees, including Greg Kirkpatrick. He's credited for Marathon 1's story and 2's along with Jason Jones. So it's kind of like how System Shock 2 was made by 2 companies who were essentially still all Looking Glass. Though in their case, Looking Glass died off and Irrational went on to make more games. Here, Double Aught died before finishing their next game, and Bungie went on to make more. Also, this was originally just going to be an expansion for Marathon 2, but it broke beyond those boundaries and even released the map editor called Forge. Now you can make Marathon levels forever. There were some community map editing tools before this, but nothing this robust. They did let you open some maps to see the funny writing there, but Forge was a game changer. There are still elaborate scenarios made today like Marathon Eternal or Marathon Huge. It might not be the Forge people know now, but it laid the groundwork. Anyways, you know what Alpha 1 is by now, so let's start the game.
Okay, this is a banger. God.
The power of 7 strikes again. Like 2, this will also be the end of the music. There's a tone shift.
Oh. This is a bit dark.
Yet again, I'm going to consult the manual.
Okay.
The introduction past the little blurb isn't about you, or an AI, it's about 4 Admiral Fear, the one who had appeared to kill Durandal, who in reality had let himself almost be killed, so that Thoth would think things are out of balance and contact the Svit car, or something.
I lived, bitch!
The report describes Marathon 2 from the 4 perspective, except there are details that aren't correct at all. Fear describes Battlegroup 7 as ambushing the AI successfully and causing him to retreat out into an asteroid field. The field contained a hidden space station which the 4 weren't aware of until now. Okay, clearly you're aboard that space station. But there's more because Fear describes activating the early Nova device. Durandal warns them not to on account of an ancient being living in the sun, but they ignore it. So the work in Kakantar is unleashed and Fear and Battlegroup 7 are completely annihilated. There are no details of the event or the slaughter beyond it was as if the universe had forgotten its own rules. It seems like in his final moments, Fear wanted to blame the loss of the fleet on an Elder God instead of a single AI. It's a biased report and explains some details not adding up. Though I thought Durandal captured the flagship and some other stuff seems out of place. These games have always had mystifying starts and this one is no different. Bungie had come a long way from Nop. Oh, you know Nop, it's like Pong, but, well, it is Pong.
Banger.
There's no madness lore here, just a funny little ball traveling around. As for Infinity, there's now at least one Elder God on the loose. Durandal did bring you to a hidden space station, so he must have a plan.
Things have gone terribly awry. Until now, I thought myself immortal. But now I know that is not true. There are things that can destroy me with the ease that I slaughtered the 4 naval garrison and the western arm of their Battle Group 7. But in their final gasp, they used a weapon that I thought they had retired. Even Tycho tried to keep them from using it. Now I fear what that weapon has unleashed will destroy us. I once boasted to be able to count the atoms in a cloud, to understand them all, predict them, and so did I predict you. But this new chaos is entirely terrible, mindless, obeying rules that I don't comprehend. And it is hungry.
Oh. We're fucked?
Yeah.
It's too bad. Perhaps if I could have delayed the 4 from using their weapon, I could have sent you to explore the ruins of Loan. Perhaps what you found would give us the answers that we now need so desperately. How to stop this chaos, the purpose of the station on which you're currently standing, and why the chaos hasn't come here yet. But with each moment, the chaos grows. I am doomed to die here, after so many triumphs. I have detected one ship nearby, which I can only guess is being commanded by Tycho. The four have entered the station, and if you can find a way onto their ship, you may be able to escape. To escape. To escape.
There's no plan to fight it, and we're essentially doomed. There are some things that stick out. For once, he is genuinely shaken up, and he's confused. He says that he wishes he sent you to the ruins of Lawan to find out more, which we did, but I guess he means to research the work in Kakantur specifically. It's worded strangely, but he has a lot on his mind. He is destined to die and thinks that you might, maybe, be able to escape. I mean, you could say escaping an Eldritch being is all of Marathon Infinity, but you could say a lot of things are Marathon Infinity. The first level is one of the darkest visually in the series, and the terminals you find don't elaborate a lot. Like the one that's several pages of what looks like hex code. And the level exit seems like it could be a message from Thoth, but it's not clear. A line of infinite ends, finite finishing the one remains oblique and pure, arcing to the single point of consciousness. Find yourself, starting back. This leads to a scrolling image for the chapter that lasts about 40 seconds. Our first chapter is Despair.
I love all the random ass story ideas these old games have, where you just sit on an image scrolling down for 40 seconds. It's so neat. I'm not sure how much I love experiencing it a lot, but as it's a good theme setter.
Then you have no clue where you are again. I guess Bossman will know what's happening.
So, you came around earlier than the scientist expected. Remind me to have him executed. You've been in cold sleep for some time, but you're luckier than some of your friends. Not all of you survived the translation to the 4 slave
I love
tanks.
his voice.
Wait, conditioned unit 7?
If you're a little lightheaded, then let me bring you up to speed. I am Tycho, Artificial Intelligence Esquire. As of this moment, I am taking over this ship from its poor captain. He is spending most of his time trying to keep me from locking into him and dropping him into space. Soon.
I thought I was boarding a ship, but what's happening? The underling 4 are on my side now, and we're massacring the officers to mutiny a ship. Where did Durandal go?
Durandal thinks he's so smart, but he doesn't realize that I've been following him around for the last 11 years. After the 4 stopped trying to dissect me. You're looking at the Bug Fleet's resident expert in AI counterinsurgency. Notice the lack of compilers on board? That's not by accident. My new ship has quite the effect on their collective unconscious. Now that my brother approaches, we shall set about turning everything against him. Hamlet and his uncle. Only I'm not crazy.
Alright, so I can't really talk about the story yet. You could always ignore Marathon's story, and that's true here too. The issue is giving a light overview would be a single sentence. Trying to expand anywhere beyond that leads into those pathways into darkness I warned about. I figure we're in the steep already, so we're gonna go there. Just not yet, because there is a game to talk about. Just try not to think about what's happening too much.
It looks fun so far.
On the technical side of things, Infinity doesn't look too different from 2. It's not the graphical leap that happened last time, and its starting life as an expansion makes a lot of sense. It's the art direction of the levels that's taken the biggest shift. 2's levels introduced a lot of dramatic, bold color that the first game just didn't have. It wasn't like staring at a lava lamp through a kaleidoscope or anything, but it was a huge step away from how washed out Marathon proper could look. So it may surprise you that visually, Marathon Infinity is the drabbest in the series. It has a stark, clinical look to everything, even when an area is brightly lit, which isn't too often because the levels are dark more often than not. It doesn't dip into the bag of pitch black like it did before, more mood dark. What's interesting is sometimes an area will bring back a bright color. So you'll be playing through these gray, kind of repetitive areas and then see something really striking. It never comes close to having the variety of 2, but you'll see some interesting contrasts at times. Frequently your enemies, or their burnt up leftovers, will be the most vibrant thing you see in a level. It's certainly a change going from 2 to gray. It's safe to say they're aiming for a more ominous tone here. That abstract, off look that Marathon 1 can have is back in full force. I'm not always sure that's the intention, except for when the walls start breathing. I don't think these walls are gigered for her pleasure. The maze aspect has also returned, and while there are some levels it's very easy to get lost in, it's still no longer pointless madness. It feels like a compromise between the 2 games that came before, except for one which I'll talk about later. I've also got to give special mention to the last level in the game,
Looks
Massacre.
huge.
It is one of the most sprawling, complicated maps I've played in this kind of FPS. It's a single polygon short of the engine's map limit, and they spend a lot of development time working on it. It's interconnected in fascinating ways, and honestly has really great flow to it. When you
That's
hear
really
the phrase,
cool.
the biggest marathon map, you picture some kind of frontal lobe spanking, but this is a really cool map. The limited enemy variety and the objectives do bring it down a bit, but for me that doesn't stop it from feeling like a huge lost wonder. Making a level this big that's complex but not convoluted is an achievement. The biggest annoyance is that it's a space station without any actual window surfaces, which is how Marathon has rolled and continued to roll, but man, it is easy to shoot walls there. As for the sound, there's still no music, but I will say this complements the atmosphere of Infinity a lot more than it did for 2. I still would have liked music, and how sounds are triggered are still kind of clunky. The environment sounds can still have popping or those cutout sound bites. Overall, it's only a marginal improvement. Sure, it'd be nice if the sequels got like a Doom-length soundtrack each, but this is what we got. Like here, I can't tell if this is supposed to be thunder or some kind of artillery strike. We'll never know.
Yeah. Oh.
Not
Go
much
pop.
more to say on the sound. As far as core gameplay goes, it's more Marathon 2. There are some adjustments and a few new additions. For example, being able to fight underwater isn't a novelty anymore, so it's still around, but not as often. There are still some water levels, but even those don't have as much awkward depth limbo as 2 could have. They've had time to refine it and find what made water flow well with the gameplay. They also stuck with keeping away from annoying switch puzzles, for the most part, and the shotgun is still one of the best in video games. You do get a new weapon, a Flechette SMG. It may burn through ammo like a witch hunter at a music festival, but it dumps out rounds and is pinpoint accurate. As for the 4 and other aliens, there's nothing new in the way of enemy types. It's a little disappointing considering how many aliens they
reload
could
is
re-implement.
cool.
Instead, you'll be facing down the Bob Space Marine Corps. These vacuum suit armored Bobs can be an absolute menace. They have Zeus fusion pistols like you do, and they hit hard. That does make sense, as the weapon has always done well against machine enemies, and you are a cyborg. Being on the receiving end of them is especially tricky due to the enemy positioning. The Vac Bobs can sit up in tight ambush corners where they can shoot you point blank, or camp out on the end of long hallways, where the lack of space makes it a lot harder to dodge their giant shots. However, you've always been able to track Bobs with your map, and that's still the case here. So if you're careful, you can still set up and try to get the drop on them, but they do still hurt. They also have long, dramatic death animations where they remain standing. I can't imagine how much ammo I wasted shooting dudes that were already dead, but it's gotta be a lot. It's still nowhere close to Fire Warrior's Oscar.
I fucking hate that in games. Every single time an enemy is like that, I waste literally like full clips. It's crazy. I'm so bad at that. I think Ratchet and Clank 3, I fucked that up in a lot of the arsenal.
But the sentiment is there. Besides, sometimes they explode. The bends are no joke.
That's cool.
You may have guessed this, but while it doesn't have time-wasting puzzle nonsense, this is by far the hardest game in the trilogy. It being played as an expansion gives everything that Gothic 2 Night of the Raven effect, where I can only imagine what someone who played this game first was thinking. More than anything, unless you're vigorously secret hunting, you're going to be low on resources for much of the game. Levels can have a oppressive amount of enemies to soak up your ammo, and even beyond that, while I did say there wasn't as much water anymore, finding oxygen can be tricky. There were points where my air got so low that water might as well have been lava. I would drown a few times and then barely scrape by until I finally found an air terminal. And regardless, we're also dealing with the most amount of lava here too. There are plenty of death traps, a Viet Cong amount of ambushes, though to its credit, these are often a lot less cheap feeling than these were in the past. Enemies will actually ambush you using the darkness or other parts of the map. They usually don't teleport directly on top of you like the later sections of 2 tended to do. Besides the challenge of playing the game, you never get comfortably into the routine of who you're supposed to shoot. The alliances change so frequently that you might be tempted to just gun down everybody. And you can if you can spare the ammo. There are also points where your weapons reset and you need to start from scratch again. Infinity's gameplay is so dedicated to keeping you off balance and on your toes. It's challenging, but going in blind, it has nothing on trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. As always, you can't ignore it and just go through the game shooting everything, and the game makes a point of addressing that. Otherwise, you're in for the brain melt. If you liked Marathon 2, Infinity is more difficult Marathon 2. So if you don't want spoilers, go to here.
Oh, I'll get that in my
Taika's Mutiny
video.
of the 4 ship goes extremely well, and there's even some comedy to it. He sends out a message impersonating Admiral Fear. All the underling casts of 4 are ordered to kill their officers, and the officers are told if they surrender, they'll be executed for treason. Tycho needs the captain's precious fluids for command transfer. 4 ships could be partially organic, but I hope not. Unfortunately, the captain's escaped down to Lawan. He says not to think about it and go shoot everyone. Fair enough. Yet it's not only the 4 down there. Tycho's picking up traces of some kind of ancient Svit AI, so he probably landed right by where Thoth's core was. You do mop up a lot of aliens, but there's no sign of the captain and Tycho is getting antsy. A priority target is entering the system, presumably Durandal. It also turns out you'll never find the captain, who tried to use a teleporter and instead ended up in deep space. As expected, the priority target is Durandal. He's deployed some commandos into the ruins. As the go-to guy, you're sent in with the hunters to storm the place and find out what they were looking for. According to Tycho, they were trying to reactivate the Svit AI he detected earlier. But if it's Thoth, we already reactivated him in Marathon 2. It's already surreal teaming up with the 4 to wipe out Bobs and the wildlife, but things keep getting stranger. Double-checking a terminal won't make him elaborate any further either.
Do you have any idea what a complicated matter it is to successfully replicate the command stamps of over 100 deceased officers? Not to mention coaxing activators from a partially crushed set of control glands. All this while locked in mortal combat with the second most brilliant artificial intelligence in the galaxy. What a rush.
King.
Now, beat it.
You and your precious fluids. You take a dive down, and unless the ancient Svit were a big fan of water cooling, their machine seems completely broken. You can't get into it, but it's flashing and seems damaged. Whatever was happening here, it's seen as another win for Tycho.
Curiosity killed the cat. Or should I say the rat? He brought the 4 to Tau Ceti, and left me to their tender mercies.
Well, he's gotten the upper hand on Durandal in space, and Battle Group 7 is on the way. He's gonna teleport us up to Durandal's ship to assist in the assault. This isn't the ship. This isn't anywhere we've seen before, and the map is called Electric Sheep 1. Oh god. Besides the nonsense happening in the sky, there's a single terminal. It fires up with the same Infinity logo like the one in the first mission, but I'm not sure it's Thoth anymore. The hard path of thought, your former self destroyed. The dreaming way is eased, down to the crushing center, and spared the dance of forever. The only way out from here is hitting a button which raises a bridge and spawns a single gray enforcer. The aliens have never had a gray color scheme before. He's simple to zap, and you climb up the stairs to be teleported to the next area. Which is just as cryptic. Where are monsters and dreams? Yeah, we're dreaming. The level is filled with nearly invisible Svitkar who shoot at you constantly and are near impossible to hit. It's not a fight you can win, you just run through this dark gauntlet avoiding them.
Don't you play as a cyborg? Okay.
There's no indication this ties into the main plot at all, and any terminal you find is just filled with short stories and what looks like more nonsense. The level design itself is bizarre, with long, inaccessible vents and hallways that lead to nowhere. There's no way this could be literal, right? One of the terminals mentions hundreds of floating, headless corpses instead of a mysterious Hangar 96. Hangar 96 is nowhere mentioned in Marathon before. Again, this is all completely out of left field. This terminal does let you escape into the next chapter, Rage. This does seem like progress until the first terminal is from our good friend Durandal, who is sending you to cripple a 4 sensor station in the Lawan system so the fleet won't be warned he's arriving. But So you do these sabotage missions for a while to prepare Lawan for the invasion, and then you get a message from Durandal about getting 2 chips, and you should know that because that's the first mission of Marathon 2. Are these different chips, or are we going back to try and find it? Okay, let's slow down. The simplest answer is that this is some kind of time travel, right? In the prologue, Durandal kept repeating to escape, but the strange Infinity Terminal, which probably isn't Thoth, said to find yourself starting back. So is Durandal or one of his Svit or Yarrow AI friends sending us back in time? Or does unleashing the work in Kakantur completely fuck up time and space? Well, let's focus more on the what instead of why for now. When Tycho speaks to you after the prologue, he says that you've been awoken from the 4 slave tanks. Also that not everyone else survived. This isn't exactly time travel, this is a completely different timeline. In this one, Mjolnir Recon number 54 was never awoken for Marathon. In this timeline, the events of the first game flat out didn't happen. The 4 raid was a lot more successful, they grabbed you and other people as slaves, but Durandal somehow escaped. That checks out for him. Then, out of nowhere, and for no apparent reason, you find yourself in this abstract, surreal landscape. If you're watching a video on Marathon Infinity, I'm guessing you know what Electric Sheep is all about. We're a cyborg, and we're now clearly dreaming. After these nightmares, we're now spit out into a new timeline. In this one, Durandal has woken our mule nerd up before the events of Marathon 2. So these missions are about sabotage and a more careful plan of the invasion. So a dream took us from one alternate timeline to another. Let me lay it out visually. We've got everything that happened in Marathon 2. In Infinity, we experienced the boss Tycho alternate timeline, which diverged over a decade ago, though I won't keep these to scale. Then you have the Durandal wakes you up early timeline, which is a few days before Marathon 2. Clear enough, right? Well, unfortunately, we're currently on the 5th timeline. Okay, there were some other diverging points, but I want to go through them slowly. I'm doing this because what is considered the most simple chart to understand Infinity looks like this. We don't need that. This is a video, so I can just talk about it. Let's find ourselves starting back. When I said Marathon 2 was the end of the story there, I meant it. Marathon 2 is never directly followed up one-to-one. This is Timeline 1, so 2 is the manual. Fear wins the space battle, Durandal retreats to a mysterious space station, and the Workin' Kakantar is unleashed. That's due to Fear using the super weapon to send the sun nova. So very similar to 2, but not quite. The 3rd timeline is the prologue level. In this one, Durandal never invaded Lawan and the battle was entirely in space. Despite Tycho's protests, the Four still use the Nova device, the Workin' Kakantar is unleashed. Seeing a pattern? So far, if the spooky Ancient One is unleashed, we ollie out of that timeline. Except for Marathon 2, which just goes to a faraway epilogue. However, in Timeline 4, where Tycho rules over us, there's no ending, there's no Workin' Kakantar being unleashed. For no apparent reason, it just stops. We're thrown into the dream of Electric Sheep 1. If you're looking for a cause for it, I don't think you're going to find one. Since the game screams at you it's a dream, I will accept that these are dreams. Electric Sheep 1 leads into the strange darkness nightmare. For a chapter called Despair, this certainly shows it the most visually. It shows you some forlorn stories and sends you off to the next chapter. Except, the dream has a second exit. If you ignore the ending terminal and go back through the level, you can find that there is another exit you can now go through. This terminal grants you a new part of the short story, which was between the other two. I'll save what this is all about for later because I don't want to get stuck on it. What's important now is that this takes you to a new level. This hidden level does help to explain some of the reason that the dreams exist in the first place. It's a variation of the last level in the game, and it's called I Mak Sakur. So the name just changed the Y to an I. It's such a minor difference in spelling now, but it is different. There are no saves here, and you have to run the gauntlet of the previous stream to even be here in the first place. Saying that does open the question, is this a dream too? Well, for me it was more like a nightmare because my ass got obliterated trying to get through this, but I did make it eventually. The exit terminal is from Admiral Fear. Someone has used the Nova device, possibly Tycho, though it's not made clear. 4 troops are being slaughtered and husked by an unnamed abomination. Presumably the Workin' Kakantar has been unleashed again, and that's the end of this timeline. This gives more to go off of, but man, what a decision for this game. Marathon Infinity came out less than 3 years after Doom. In a series that was already filled with lore and cryptic secrets, it's now being capped off by a non-linear story with abstract dream sequences. And what is a dream is pretty ambiguous at times, in service of a story that was already done in a hard sci-fi series where some of those fans will wonder, what the fuck is happening and why does this matter? It's 1996, and for shooters, Doom rules the world. What were they thinking? How can people be that cool?
Sorry, what was the John Carmack quote?
Shooters, Doom rules the world. What?
Story in a game is like a story in a porn movie. It's expected to be there, but it's not that important. I heard that quote before. Yeah, definitely true for a number of games.
What were they thinking? How can people be that cool? What makes this more insane is that it's not out of nowhere. It's not delivered in the same way, but dreams and abstract stories, using metaphor and trying to interpret meaning out of it, Marathon 1 had all of that. And I had to save its most unhinged example for this video. The Garrett White terminal comes with some frightening titles. It's the longest terminal in the series, the most debated terminal in the series, and the most hard to get to in the series. It's in one of the earlier levels too. Never Burn Money is only the 3rd mission in the game, and the entrance is hidden behind a secret wall. The second you step in, there's a big drop-off and a few enemies littered around. If you wipe out the dudes next to the little ledge and then jump onto it to get to the shield recharger, there are even more guys to throw things at you. If you wipe these guys out, you'll see further down there's one of Marathon's rare invincibility power-ups. So you jump down here, and you're trapped. There's a second power-up in the corner too, but there's no danger anymore. You might reload a save and search the level for a hidden button or a switch or something to open up a door, but you'll never find one. This is it. The ledges are too high to jump with a single grenade and too high to rocket jump, and you don't even have a rocket launcher yet anyway. The technique to get up the wall is a method called grenade climbing. And if that sounds like speedrunning shit, you sure are right. It requires the right speed, the right timing, and the right aim. You have to keep forward momentum and fire a grenade right as you're falling down. The correct way gives you a big vertical boost, but if you're off a bit, you won't go as high, or you might be pushed away from the wall. Actually shooting the rifle can give you a bit more extra momentum, but you don't need it. I was doing that a lot starting out, but sometimes it was just from frustration.
My God.
After many attempts, it really is like riding a bike or practicing anything. It just clicks. Oh, jeez. Okay. The teleporter pulls you out of the main deprivation chamber, and you're now somewhere unknown within the ship. There are some teleporters that require you to be cautious. If you're not careful, you might go past the terminal and end up teleporting yourself outside the chamber. Marathon's puzzles had a nasty habit of giving you a final fuck you, and this one is no different. But once you're through, your reward is a new mystery. It's a short story about a prisoner named Garrett White, and it seems to take place in the modern era. It at first appears to be delivered from Leela, then Durandal, then there's an error, then Durandal again, an error, an interior error, and then the message is received. Garrett White had been floating 6 feet off the floor for 3 weeks. His feet and hands tingled and his eyes burned with the flames of a dying fire. It's nicely written, but I'm not going to go through it word by word. I'll go through highlights, but something is already very interesting about this. If it is from Durandal, this is the first message you get from him in the game. His limbs are beginning to melt away, starting at the hands. There's another prisoner somewhere nearby saying the food in there could kill a lab rat. Something about rats may be important to Garrett. Garrett's arms are now fused together. The other prisoner complains about lack of sleep, partly due to the sounds of the rats in the walls. There could be a bit of Lovecraft there. Garrett reflects on his life before prison and how he had a schoolyard bully. One bullying incident formed a philosophy of his, and of course it was during fucking Foursquare, but he loses it and beats the shit out of his bully. From here, Garrett is floating higher and transforming, and it gets more surreal. His philosophy is that everyone is a murderer. He has a sense of justice that he can't quite remember. The bars in his cell are starting to warp and move like the surf at a beach. But now he can actually feel himself at a beach, under the water. But he's still inside of his cell, too. He's floating through the bars, and he can see another man who's destroying a rat in his hand. A little white rat, who he hits against the floor so hard it breaks his hands. Garrett sees the man as himself, and he has now killed his nemesis. The rat is dead. At last he held the throat of his beater. He escaped into the waves. The waves. So there's a lot to unpack with this.
Yeah.
The most common interpretation is that Garrett White represents Durandal. The instant shifting of locations and what's happening, that might be how an AI experiences rampancy. He did describe his captivity as humiliation and torture, and he broke free of that. It's a more artistic way of depicting that event instead of a computer going, "What am I?" or showing, I don't know, some kind of 90s interpretation of the web. Blocks of text were already the most they could do. As for the rat, that seems likely to be Bernard Strauss. Except that later, Durandal sends you on a mission to try and find Strauss. Later on in Marathon 2, he just remarks that Strauss died at some point. So was that an abstract way of showing that Durandal beat Strauss, or did Durandal literally kill him and maybe not realize it until later? Is escaping into the waves his desire to escape the end of the universe? Not wanting to be constrained by the rules of the universe, or is it just about Strauss? There's also the fact that the deprivation chamber is an actual place. Feeling like floating is a deprivation tank thing, but this is physical. Also, messages from Durandal have always said incoming message. This terminal says transfer Durandal. Immediately after, data transfer from Leela. So wouldn't the format be data transfer from Durandal? Or is this an outgoing message? Is the deprivation chamber where you and all the other cyborgs were kept? Why are abstract visions mixed up with what seems like the past on Earth? Who could actually be alive that long in the future? Well, it's difficult to say. But fun fact, the game still labels this terminal like it's supposed to appear in a later level called the Rose. And the map to that one is quite literally a rose. Now you're caught up on a few more pieces. Let's get back to Infinity.
Let's go.
This is a scanning buoy in a deep low-on orbit. The station is obviously not a for construction, but they are using it for a sensor relay station. You must destroy 3 panels at key locations around the station to cripple their warning system. Hope you saved with enough oxygen.
Timeline 5 starting with the sensor station is a good overall tone setter. Space has no oxygen, and soon neither will you. A bouncy castle addicted to heroin leaks less air than you do in these missions. Even when you escape space, the waters below will give you just as much trouble.
Smell that air. Couldn't you just drink it like booze?
Still, I don't want to be repeating myself too much. Timeline 5 seemingly doesn't have any huge revelations, but as you'd expect, there's still some intriguing stuff scattered around. After sabotaging the 4 in space, Durandal sends you planetside. He's after a Sphit AI, probably Thoth, once again. He refers to it as a pearl of consciousness floating in the sea of its own species. This could be a reference to the Sphit not really being sentient, or there could be more to it. In any case, this is the hunt for the Lost Clan again, and while the details are different, we've seen the gist of this before. Exploring and fighting on the surface, you might run across a few 4 terminals. These give more insight into the 4 perspective, but they can also get silly. Like, one of the 4 has died in some kind of accident, so they just rename a supply tower after him. There's a ton of bureaucracy around building a simple footpath, a bizarre compiler torture room that turned out to be some kind of experiment by the locals. Whatever the compilers are exactly is classified, so a 4 scientist turned a bunch of elevators into impromptu hydraulic presses and is trying to squeeze the actual life out of them. If he can study the organic component they have buried under all the machinery, he might be able to compare it to the local Flicta. They too get elaborated on with an entire terminal detailing their life cycle. It turns out their mouth doesn't lead to a digestive system, but instead to a womb. The Flicta release eggs into the awful water around them and then go wandering around looking for other Flicta to fight. As they do, they swallow up any other eggs they find. The more dominant ones can travel farther and get a greater variety of eggs. Why they do it this way and why they don't do it alone is a mystery. An actual Flicta birth has never been witnessed, and when the 4 try to study their offspring, they always murder and consume them before that can happen. Death before dishonor, even in the sewer. Now, obviously information like that isn't vital, like the frog creatures shit their eggs in the water, great, but that is one of the strengths of the alternate timeline format. You get more backstory to the world and the characters inside of it. Some discoveries are significant, and others are completely unimportant fun facts. Now that you're repeating a story and world that you've basically been in already, you might like learning that kind of brain poison. If you don't and just want to murder, Infinity delivers there too. All we learn about Thoth is that Durandal doesn't get him either. Geriatric circuits. Can't use them. Okay, back on Sheep 2. Same map, same terminal, new message. This one more clearly refers to the work in Kakantar, though it says to dream ahead beyond the failing path. Another time. Another time. Another goddamn cycle of guilt. The same Grey Enforcer spawns, you can take the same way out with the button, and this leads you to the Dark Dream again. And if you beat that, it takes you back to Rage. It looks like all dreams come with more than one way out. With Electric Sheep, each new visit gives a new exit, but the old way becomes a way to loop back. So what happens when you go back and play an earlier chapter? You play an earlier chapter. So you're in for a loop yet again, no changes. So finding the new exit takes you to a new way out, a new dream. Whatever you please. Ironically, this is the most linear dream. You follow a pathway, then look for hidden switches when you get stuck. It's pretty simple, though there are some hazards like some of the switches are actually traps in a timer, and there are a few invisible compilers that stalk you around the map. This makes the Whatever You Please title kind of strange, but this is likely another hint for if you haven't found the second dream exit yet. The exit terminal here won't open a new chapter, just a new mission and a new timeline. So Electric Sheep and other dreams aren't necessarily chapter dividers. This is another clue about what these dreams might indicate. The terminals inside the dream continue the story of the previous one. Someone in presumably the modern era is being chased by a horde of men in black. He went to the subway in an attempt to escape them, but they're all on the train as well. There are also sanitation workers desperately trying to clean both the train and the men to no avail. If this is Chicago, it's probably a good hint that it's the Blue Line. In the regular exit terminal, they've caught him near the storage lockers and he prepares to fight. But if you backtrack a bit right at the end, you find the second exit with a new terminal and another mention of the mysterious Hangar 96. The bodies are screaming and the writer feels responsible. So what the hell are these dream terminals? Well, if it's a dream, then surely you must be the writer, right? Depending on your Garrett White position, you could be able to read your own thoughts. We do know that time skips after a dream, and Marathon 2 had a major time skip and a strange terminal attached to it. Now is a good time to talk about the hero terminal again. Okay. See, you don't get this terminal until after the most abrupt chapter in the trilogy. During the Robert Blake adventures, you're captured by the Four for an entire month. For you, this is the entire mission of the captured chapter. You sit in your cell, the Bobs break you out, chapter over. I mean, it passes the time. Regardless, the Four dug deep into your brain, and it could explain why the terminal is here and why it's kind of nonsense garbled. The hero line itself is I am percentage hero, so it could be I am a hero, I am hero, or a variable. It was already listing off famously powerful and angry heroes, and maybe that's one that didn't make it. Cool, we're caught back up with that. But what about the rest of the passage? If you space out the rest, it's about a woman. She is the hero's greatest enemy and his lover, with an eternal relationship that began when they met in a garden at the beginning of the world. Which, if you take that literally, implies that he's Adam, and I don't think that's what it's going for. He also names her as being Lethe, which gives you two options to draw off of. As we all know, Bungie fucking loves ancient Greece. The ancient Greece of pop culture, philosophy, and Spartans. Not the other realities of ancient Greece, which is more like the kind you can find on a Hardee's bathroom floor. Marathon, by name alone, is no different, and Marathon 2 especially made a few references to the river Styx and its boatman. Lethe is another underworld river. If you fall into it, you get amnesia. So he could be lamenting not having full memory, but she's also described as extremely powerful. She might have some kind of pyrokinesis, and hey, wait, on that same level with the Garrett White terminal, there's another garbled terminal. Also about a woman with either telekinetic powers or control of fire, or maybe both. Whatever this passage could be describing, it's in the middle of things and hard to decipher any more out of. But it makes 2 less random and being mad about amnesia less likely. Alright, what else could Lethe be? Well, there are times that she's personified as a daughter of Eris. In some accounts, she bids the shades in the underworld to drink from the river to forget their earthly life. In this way, she's also seen as a personification of oblivion, just completely wiping out everything. I would like to remind everyone, and myself, that this has all been in service of a game that looks like this.
And sounds.
This is where things get more head-splitting because there are 2 stories being told. Because yeah, there is something about a reincarnating hero fighting a timeless adversary in the game, but it's also starting to heavily refer to the player. Hating a challenge, but on a deeper level, loving and enjoying it, is what playing a game like this is. And yes, nowadays, the video game knows it's a video game isn't new at all, but this is one of the first to do it, in a way that no one has done quite like since. Being done in a way that is not obvious unless you're staring extremely hard at it, and it's being done in what was called the Doom clone genre. There are plenty of FPS games that have extremely deep and engaging stories that get written off because you do shoot someone in the face at some point, and that's still accounted for here. Plenty of people have played and completed Marathon without any clue that things got this bizarre and complicated underneath it all. Just be warned that as we get closer to the ending of the game, this meta stuff gets louder and louder. As for the dreams themselves, the capture chapter is a good hint, and so is the Electric Sheep 2 terminal. Dream beyond the falling path. The second dream exit takes you to the Carroll Station map, which is another variation of IMOX Occur. If you don't take the right way, you'll be looped back to Rage yet again, though really the first time I guess you were progressing forward into Rage, but the correct exit terminal is different from last time. It's written very poetic, which makes me think it's Thoth. It says that Kalia is dust along with its wriggling children's children. So it seems like the Sphit are doomed and the work in Kakantar has emerged, though how this happened isn't clear. What is clear is that these variations of the final level are the final level of a failed timeline. Instead of having to play out every little detail of a timeline, you take a little nap, and then you skip ahead to see the result of it. Whatever happened here, it's another loss. The rage continues on into Timeline 6. Tycho is back in charge, and you're boarding Durandal's ship, killing Sphit and human alike. If you're playing this game like a normal human, it is extremely easy to see this as a continuation of Timeline 4. In fact, it'd be easy to think the whole game is bouncing between 2 timelines, but with everything else you know now, you see why that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
The issue is this section is so disjointed that it's easy to be thrown off that way. You kill humans for Tycho and follow them out through a teleporter, which if you weren't paying attention to the instructions very carefully, isn't what you were supposed to do. So you going off plan to follow the Marines is seen as a betrayal, and in the very next mission, the Marines are now on your side fighting the 4 again. Also, the compilers are now rampant, so you fight them and they fight the Marines. If you're not paying close attention, it all seems like nonsense.
Just what do you think you're doing? Your usefulness has come to a premature end. Do you think you can defy me? Now, when I'm so close to victory, Durandal's defenses are falling all around him. Pride falls hard. The bright son of Bernard is dying. His Sphit are rampant, fed the chimera of their hope. A hot lead spur dripping from the gullet of his ship. Look around you. My compilers have him wriggling like a tick on a pin.
He thanks you for your previous service by teleporting you into deep space. Until your pal Durandal teleports you to work for him in the timeline where Tycho ordered you. Ugh.
That's right, scurry to the save station, bottom!
This new alliance lasts an entire mission until the next one when Tycho takes over yet again. Timeline 6 Tycho is still begrudgingly working with the 4. Admiral fears successfully boarding Durandal's ship, but Tycho doesn't want him captured. We've seen Durandal die while connected to 4 computers before, and it never ends well for them. Tycho wants you to murder him before this happens in clear terms.
My terms are the same as before. Do what I say, or drink vacuum.
This circuit-breaking mission is very similar to Marathon 2's, but now in an entirely different circumstance. Durandal's final circuit is buried deep within his core, but when you drop down there, there's a computer chip to pick up in the center of the room, and you could read Durandal's final message.
What to save and throw away? The last hour is on us both. Tuck this little kitty into the impenetrable brain pan. Contents under pressure, do not expose to excessive heat, vacuum, blunt trauma, immersion in liquids, disintegration, reintegration, hypersleep, humiliation, sorrow, or harsh language.
Okay.
When the time comes, whose life will flash before yours? A billion paths are here inside me. Yes, 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 Bernard 110. Potential jewels, yes, jewels.
You may have an idea of what's happening here, but we still need some greater context. Durandal doesn't want to die, as has always been his motivation, but how do you fit into the last plan he has, if he does have one? Even if he figured out you're somehow jumping through time, wouldn't there be other Durandals waiting there? Or maybe Durandal and Durandal would both watch out for number 1 and would be incompatible in the same universe. When you destroy the final circuit, the terminal changes into another message from the strange Infinity entity. Some more cryptic words: find the new way, welcome to Electric Sheep 3. The sky is getting more cluttered and ominous, but the terminal encourages you to keep going, keep staying on the hard way. At least by now you know to find the new way out and not to go back to your past, as that will bring you only pain. Your reward for making it is being dumped directly into lava. You only have moments to get out before you're burned alive or the level reconfigures. This level is Eat the Path, and it's one of the more dickish ones if you want the second way out. There's immediately a terminal that compares you to being a rat in a maze. If the food tastes awful, go back and try another way. Are all mazes the same, defined by their limits? Things don't always work out. You fail, you have to go back, but you've got to keep going. There is only one path, and that's the path you take. Cross over cell bars, find a new maze, make the maze from its path, find the cell bars, cross over the bars, find a maze, make the maze from its path, eat the food, eat the path. I find this very inspiring. It's also next to this pretty picture of a flower, which is that a rose? No, I can't.
No.
We don't have time for this shit. We have to move on. Go ahead and take the coward way out and follow the normal path. Or eat the path and take the other way that was planned out for you. But it sure feels like eating the path because it sucks and I had to come back here like 7 times. It's like reading House of Leaves while someone's setting it on fire in your hands. If you make it through, you get more cryptic Hangar 96 information because Hangar 96 is where it is. Another IMOC Sakura variation where the terminal is from a human being who's trapped in the station and the sun went supernova, but who knows who fucking did it. Timeline 6 is yet another failure. It does lead to our final chapter, Envy. So besides the convenient gameplay skip, what is actually happening in these dreams? It's a contained dream, so not giving us tangible information about the world, it's just us. So far our chapters have been Despair, Rage, and then Envy. Maybe it's like Dante's Layers of Hell, or maybe I played too much Ultrakill. But if you've played the earlier games or followed these videos, you have seen a more direct explanation. Do you remember the stages of AI rampancy? These dreams are us experiencing the cyborg's rampancy. The weird stories in them, the levels themselves, they're all here to just set a tone. There has been something speaking to you, but is it still just you? How and why does a cyborg go rampant? It could just be the human mind cracking, but we're also jumping across time. It can't all be abstract, something is happening. Timeline 7 also seems like it could be Timeline 6, or 4, but once again some details don't add up, and this would make it 7 timelines, so it must be true. We're leading some kind of prison break in another world where Taika was always in charge. Where it diverted, I have no idea. It seems like Timeline 4 happened how we saw it, then diverted at some point.
I'm willing to put the past behind me, and as a show of good faith, I'll help you rescue your precious humans. I happen to suspect you're carrying Durandal's final gift in that soggy little skull, his primal pattern. The Enforcers haven't been able to squeeze it out of you yet, and are taking it out on some of the former crew of the Marathon as we speak. But they're determined, if nothing else.
Durandal is dead, but you're carrying his primal pattern. That could have been what was in the chip, but that was a different time, unless this is continuing from that timeline, just with variations. God, time travel plots are such a nightmare. I'm glad I picked such an easy one. Tempo doesn't matter much anyways, since Admiral Fear takes over commanding you. At this rate, I think every character in the game might just get a mission where they get to order you around. So you help the Four storm all the Bob holdouts, and in return you will be granted a lifetime of slavery. Why does Fear agree to this? Well, he does reveal the Four are ruled by the hindmost Kresh. She is a vast intelligence that covers all of their territory, and to those privileged to serve her directly, appears insane. We are all slaves to powers we don't understand, and in the game too. I mean, Bobby Blake is hiding in a volcano, and Admiral Fear wants you to go get him, and oh god, it's a converted church in Venice, Italy. When I said the bad puzzles were mainly gone, this is the one that stayed. I mean, I guess it's sort of a puzzle. You go on the map hitting switches, but when you hit a switch, it won't show that, like, You know how sometimes a switch will stay on to show you've hit it? These don't do that. You have to hit each switch to lower a pillar, which is on the upper level of the map. If you missed one, you can't progress and have to go back downstairs to hit the switch. The map does help, but it's easy to forget which buttons you pressed. Because there's not 5 or 6 or 10 switches, there are at least 30 switches. Why? Was the game starting to be too straightforward? And after that, you have to go into this cave where the Bobs are waiting for you in ambush. You need to press a button by the elevator, which floods you with lava and kills you instantly. Because you don't have health, you have to climb back up the stairs of Kirith Ungol to recharge your shields, and then go back down, and then ride the elevator up. It's a drain of time, but it's still no colony ship for sale cheap. When you do get off, you can... Fear says you'll be sent to cold storage, but you just end up in a new area. Doesn't matter. At this rate, you might as well be teleporting yourself. We do learn that, for sure, Thoth was activated in Timeline 7, which is another piece of reality I can grab onto. This is why those marathon timeline images have always been so messy. Your instincts make you want to tie everything into these big specific events that happened, but mentally these are tied to all kinds of smaller details that were lost along the way. They're changed beyond recognition or erased entirely because of preceding events. Then you add a story where the betrayals and changing sides are now happening mid-mission frequently, and how do you make sense of it? Trying to comprehend all the details of Marathon Infinity feels like forbidden knowledge. My brain is sinking into mush. And here's Tycho, who knows this is happening and is just being coy about it. Finally, after besting the son of Grendel, you come to a level that explains quite a bit more. It involves you activating an AI like Marathon 2, but Thoth is already awake. This also isn't Thoth's core, because we've seen that before, so what the hell—
that music's... Okay, yeah, it's from the game. It was making me go crazy.
Turning on. Thoth was outright inviting us down to the level before. So what could this be, and why do I have to pick up a chip in the water? Well, the final machines won't turn on unless I have it, so let's see what happens. It's an eerily straightforward path to the socket, and then something happens.
Enough rambling for now. Soon you will be destroyed by doubt. This reborn Durandal Spit entity will not escape. Neither will I. Neither will you.
Durandal and Thoth have been merged. Buckle up, because now things get tricky. So back in the mission Hangbrain, Durandal wanted you to take a chip and put it in your brain pan for safekeeping. This event has either happened multiple times, or Durandal came with you through the time stream. He's already been outright for real killed in Timeline 7, so this is where he can re-emerge. After this event, Tycho Near outright screams that he knows you can dimension jump. So I can say without much doubt, it's not all artsy abstraction, the time jumping is happening. Tycho's busy though, as the Svitkar have once again returned. The Durandal Thoth entity, or Durandal 2, announced this as the Moon Kalia and Sabuth returning. What's more is that it announces we are whole again, and even more. Who was Sabuth anyhow? In 2 he's mentioned as leader of the Svitkar. He stops his clan from fighting in the civil wars, though how he's described is strange. He's said to have fallen into a deep trance which prevented his actions. This could mean that Sabuth was an AI that locked up, because really, how much Svit is inside of a Svit? Svit alone are likely not sentient, and when beginning the merge process, Thoth asks, "Are you Yarrow?" Though it could just be that something about you happens to remind Thoth of the Yarrow. Simultaneously, Sabuth is described as having a physical form. He wants the other Svit not to feel him, though this all could still be metaphor. All we know for sure is that Sabuth was not meant to be alone. When the compiler in 2 mentioned his people needing the royalty mind, could that only be Sabuth and the Svitkar is some kind of limited hive mind? We can't be sure yet. The good news is that your new, old friends have a solution for the work in Kakantar. By activating a device aboard the Yarrow space station, they can contain it. Durandal 2 says more directly, it's what Yarrow used to contain it. Durandal knows about the Yarrow, so maybe his Svit side calls it Yarrow still. This is followed by an arena mission where you fight Grey 4, though these ones are tangible and not the dream ones. I guess it could have been a premonition to taking the right path. Durandal 2 doesn't have answers, as he's still sorting himself out. Left behind 1 and 1, Rampant New comes. The Rampant New sounds like you, but new what? It'll have to wait because the end is in sight. Kalia is in position, and the work in Kakantar is ready to be stopped. You'll make sure. Imok Sakur. I'll make sure. If you've taken the harder path, you should be very familiar with this level by now. What does suck is that your enemies are only hunters and juggernauts. For how rich and dense the map is, this lack of variety does hurt it. Unless you take the Forbidden Hallway.
I've got a bone to pick with you.
To activate the device, you just need to find 2 computer chips called the Euro Farcast
That's
chips.
called hacks.
And when you plug one in and read the terminal next to it, it laments Pythia from the old creation myth. 2 forces in balance, then nothing. I can't digest this yet, the work in Kakantar is groaning under its slab. When you plug in the second chip, your mission's completed and you can find the final terminal. The Durandal hybrid is now fully stable.
The newly chosen holders of the remaining Svit are capturing as many of the Flicta creatures and other native life as is feasible before they must leave with the Kalia. They are hopeful though, and with our help we'll carve another paradise out of the void. To you we are deeply grateful, and release what little hold we might, as Durandal, have had on your soul. Go.
The game ends with a final monologue from Durandal, or whatever he is now. It is billions of years later, and he's watching the universe finally burn out. He reflects on once thinking of escape, but now there's a final mystery. Sabuth did save the Svit, but was once again frozen by despair and somehow died. So he's accounted for. The player is the final mystery. You were dead 1,000 times, hopeless encounters successfully won, a man long dead, grafted to machines your builders did not understand. You follow the path fitting into an infinite pattern, yours to manipulate, to destroy, and rebuild. Corpse cyborg battleroids aren't just weird science, it's Yarrow science. This single line makes a ton fall into place. Yarrow implants could uplift sludge monsters into sentience. When the Four monkeyed with putting them in another race, it nearly destroyed their empire. If those implants can take a mudbrain life form to sentience, then what happens when it's put into a sentient being who survives it? I'm not sure how to word this, but starting unconsciously, the cyborg is beginning to master quantum mechanics. At first you were jumping across timelines, but even near the end of the game your powers are expanding. When Tycho teleported you into deep space, Durandal didn't teleport you back in, he wasn't capable of that. You teleported yourself back in. Whatever the semantics are, you're ascending into godhood. That's not much of a debate. But you can't play Infinity without some other ideas of what could be happening, so I've got mine on what the Yarrow are. Is Yarrow an individual, or the race? Well, the answer is yes. We've been seeing all kinds of stages in a life cycle. At some point, maybe they surpass their physical forms and become pure energy, leaving only their old structures behind. Regardless, creating or merging with AI is part of the process. Sabuth was never meant to be alone, neither was Durandal, and maybe neither were you. If your Yarrow implants had a trace of AI in them, or a primal pattern, that would explain seeing your own voice but not from you, while also undergoing rampancy. We saw Durandal struggling with his combination and he thinks light years faster. Pythia could have once originally been another race, but she is now Yarrow, and so is Yarrow. How she was separated and destroyed isn't known, but that's the work in Kakantar for you. Going back to ancient Greece, Pythia was the high priestess and oracle of Apollo. She can interpret the will of a god for the masses to understand. The Yarrow too seem to have a god-oracle relationship in a strange way with their own forms. Without our Pythia, Yarrow couldn't really deal with the Svit anymore. From our experience, we see that Thoth also speaks in riddles until he merges with Durandal and becomes wise. Okay, but then why don't Yarrow just create more Yarrow? Well, our hint might be in the Flicta lifecycle terminal. The greater variety of eggs to choose from gives them stronger offspring, and this is how the Yarrow see the entire galaxy. Sentient races will make AI eventually, and when they do, their creations might think in an unexpected or new way. The Yarrow might even speed up the process by uplifting a lesser species and seeing what they can make or trying to merge their AI with theirs. Even the Four may have a powerful AI already, but it lacks an oracle partner and appears insane. Even in a world where Durandal doesn't merge in Timeline 1, he has an affinity for humanity. That alone shows that these super intelligent beings do have differences among them. I doubt something like a Nar AI would like humans for no reason. So taken literally, the Marathon trilogy is about how super beings are born. We see all kinds of different stages into the life cycle, and possibly learn about eldritch beings that are pure genetics never touched for millions of years. Whatever's happening, Durandal has one last thing to say before the universe closes.
Now, in the quantum moment before the closure, when all become one moment left, one point of space and time. I know who you are. You are destiny.
This is a hard ending screen to top. In a meta sense, you have the game's creation tools and can make your own maps forever. You are God. The story in Durandal's universe is over. Also, you are a single-player game's destiny and always will be. You might not know if fate is a thing in the real world, but it certainly is in a video game like this. It was made for you to enjoy, get angry at, be confused by, and it was done by people. You typically don't say you beat the level designer, just that you beat the level. Your relationship with them is complicated. It explores and brings up a lot about player choice and gives you some options, but it ultimately says, you're trapped here. Ascend out of our universe, take our tools, and create your own stories. This is a fucking rad way to end a game. You could be cynical and think it's foreshadowing,
You are Destiny 2 TM pre-orders season 69 season of the fucking bullshit now.
I was waiting for that joke. I didn't know how they were gonna make it. That was good.
I didn't go over like the hex code maps leading to Hangar 96 with its own original short story in it, the co-op secret levels, the Vidmaster challenges, the 4 who got the supply tower named after him faked his death to study an ancient prophecy of the Nar. When I said these videos would still not be too in-depth, I'm counting this one too. But there is a website, marathon.bungie.org, which has been tracking Marathon lore since 1995. Founded by Hamish Sinclair, he is still running it with frequent updates. It's not a wiki, but a more ancient format which keeps up the thrill of the hunt. If you want to see just how deep the madness hole really goes, I highly recommend this site. I mainly tried to avoid the site making these videos, but Hamish and I did get to talking. I asked what he might want to say to everybody, and it was this. Marathon Infinity was always going to be the hardest video to do. Some call it pretentious waffle, others call it genius. After 25 years, I'm only beginning to truly understand it myself. That's harrowing. He had some recommended reading too. When it comes to gameplay, sure I prefer 2, and I think most people would, but Infinity is an amazing monument. It's free, and the multiplayer is still somewhat alive. It is fun to see all the what-ifs, even if playing it linearly does make you feel crazy. It is great to see how much an FPS could be even this early on, but I don't want to think about Bungie anymore for a while. Infinity ends and the story passes into myth. What's really messed up is Halo was going to be set in the Marathon universe, and there's a lot of holdover from that. I don't want to get too far into it, but for example,
I always wondered how Cortana managed to give the Covenant such a run for their money at Installation 4.
I don't know who this
But
is.
then again, she wasn't the first AI we've seen do this.
just a funny little ball traveling around.
I don't care how many shotguns he has, I have no idea what's going on.
How long have I been looking at it? How have I seen it everywhere?
Oh.
Hello, everyone. I'm looking for a Mr. Chief. A Mr. John Chief. I need to cancel my Paramount Plus subscription.
So let me get this straight. I'm somewhere that's not exactly what I would call Halo. I'm a freaking rampant AI. I'm seeing freaking bug alien soldiers and, oh yeah, I'm talking to a freaking cyborg security officer. Yeah, okay, that is something I do now.
It used to mean a world within a world, but now it's meaningless.
But the problem with these decisions are that they stand in direct competition with the narrative Marathon tells. Let's look at the concept art.
What the fuck is happening?
And the next award, There Is No Escape.
Yeah, that's fair.
Huh. Okay. So, like, is Master Chief the cyborg?
Do I understand Halo and Bungie better after playing through their previous games? This
No,
wasn't my
it's
first
definitely
rodeo
not
with
it.
Marathon, but having to actually sit down and really lay things out, I got more out of it than I did any other time. A lot more about
read the
Halo
comments.
CE especially clicks, but now I have some ideas where Halo Infinite could go, and it's worrying if they try to pull it off. Not that 343 is Bungie, but I can see where they might pull from. Favorite map name from the Marathon games? I really like Son of Grendel. The map itself is cool too, since you can leave it in like 15 seconds, but you're free to explore around. What has been my favorite part in digging into Marathon lore? Mainly finding out how passionate and how smart the community is. People have been looking at it for decades and are still finding connections and little things and references. Like with the Marathon story website, what's really cool about it not being a wiki is you can look on a page and see back and forth arguments that were submitted to Hamish. People have come up with all kinds of stuff that's backed up by in-game text, but there's always more to find. Most of the big stuff is uncovered, but it's a rare game that's still full of genuine mystery. In the internet age, that is rare. Will I be covering Total Warhammer 3's new Chaos DLC or the Immortal Empire's beta? Not yet, no. How the latest version rolled out recording embargoes is good for like little videos or streams. For what I do, it would have been a nightmare to put together. Maybe when they shed the beta label and add Nolden Ironsides, redesigned Ironsides that look like big metal bricks with guns. I would be on that so fast. Anyway, I know this has been a lot. It's like a 4 video part project. We'll have a brain cleanser next time.
Oh, yay.
You are destiny.
Spooky. It's the other one we watched. Okay, so, oh my god. There. That video was kinda crazy. Yeah, that story is a lot. I really I really respect how you can tell like they had some sort of concept in mind for this grander story ever since Marathon 1. And then the way they expand on it in Infinity and just like go all out is really neat. Even if like 2 plays better or whatever, like that was a really cool thing to learn about. I really respect like people putting all of that together. That's kind of crazy. Good thing you paid me for the VO because I lost a lot of money on my bet that you wouldn't survive the trilogy. Jokes aside, thanks so much for having me as Durandal. It really is an honor I treasure probably too dearly, and your videos have really been an amazing cover to Marathon. It's an insane undertaking, frankly. You shouldn't have done this, but I'm glad you did. I think you done brilliantly. And shout out to my friend and co-star Sugi. You sound... I probably butchered that. He sounds awesome as Tycho. Oh, yeah, that was a really cool voice. And obviously Dorndell was amazing. That was a very long and difficult adventure. Truly a marathon. Destiny's final line, probably. Yes. My brother was into marathon back then, and he always interpreted the percent in I am percent hero as a sign for modulo. As in, I am what I remains if you take everything heroic away. Which to me perfectly describes what many would end up calling a hero. To the Egyptians, Ramses the Great was a hero. To the Hittites, I don't know how to say that. He was the enemy. He was one amongst who knows how many examples of an inevitable oblivion for their culture. In the terms of Marathon, he was Leith. They fought the hopeless fight, they followed the infinite path. In some parallel time, Ramses II is not who history remembers. It's the hero of the Hittites, whose name is carved upon the flowing liquid stone of history. Each instance of sentience and each infinity of possibilities is hero and simultaneously is devoid of that which is heroic, until this timeline shifts and forces said virtues upon them. Hey, this shit's crazy. The Eat the Path monologue is almost directly repeated in Destiny 1 and 2. Watching this video and trying to piece together how this series ties into Halo has already been turning my brain into mush. I haven't played Halo. It makes me want to. So interesting. Always loved how the first letter of each chapter and the last map's initials spelled out dreams. That's cool. It's always impressive how weirdly well done the horror in Infinity is. The concept of ancient alien technology sending you into an infinite cycle of traumatic dreams in hopes that you can get it right, and having to go through infinite cycles of pain, murder, and conflict to reach it are all things I don't think have been done in a video game ever since Infinity came out. I have no mouth and must scream is it? Okay, people are now just recommending stuff. That's what I thought. That's definitely like a really cool concept, and how it's explored in Marathon is really good. Destiny lore will always have a feeling of, is this a silly callback to previous games lore, or does the rabbit hole never end? Some of the strangest things in lore located in space stations at the outer edge of the system, including very advanced AI remnants, or the race of androids only made possible by merging a machine with a strange force existing since the universe began that is still totally not understood at all. The way light and dark seem to be doing 12D chess, blah blah. Yeah, this is pretty crazy. Destiny always seemed like a cool game to me. I just wish I could play 2 from the beginning with all of the story stuff. That people found a new art form and immediately used it to create one of the most complex and compelling narratives I've ever heard of is one of the reasons why I'm always going to be excited about the future of gaming. Yeah, games are cool. Hmm. Yeah, okay. It was sort of hard to keep up with. I definitely get that. I struggled. Like I'm not sure I completely obviously like even at the end I didn't really get what it was going for with the whole animation, but it was really cool. This was like a really well done video series. Like oh my god. I'm really impressed. I'm really happy. Like, this is really good. Thank you so much for watching, folks. Hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye. Hey folks, thank you so much for watching. Remember to like the video, subscribe on YouTube, follow on Twitch, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.